Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great and you're following the 3H's of the channel. And in this video, it's all about crazy encounters from the state of Wisconsin. So, if that sounds like something you're interested in, pull up a stump with me and let's get into it. Thank you for watching. Way back when I was 19, I used to hang out with a very outdoorsy friend. He actually used to live in a tent off-grid for about 4 months out of the year. And at the time of this encounter, it was 1 a.m. He says, "Hey, want to check out this wilderness area? It's extremely untouched, and nobody ever goes there. It's Mud Lake Wildlife Area for anybody who wants to look it up." We drive out and down desolate back roads for 20 minutes to get there. We go down a series of back roads that you usually wouldn't even notice are there, and we pull up to a trailhead. We get out of the car with a baseball bat, just in case. The first step onto the trail, we immediately felt nervous and uneasy, or at least I did. I was walking down the trail. The trail was long and wide. It was a straight path with huge trees leaning inward and towering over the top of it. And then we start hearing this odd noise. It sounded like bottles clanking together. I said, "Dude, do you hear that?" He said, "Yeah, it's like bottles or something. That's weird." We keep walking hesitantly. Way down the trail appears this really bizarre, bright, foggy, transparent figure. I'm the first to speak up. I say, dude, what is that? Like, it is slowly and consistently levitating toward us. We're not saying a word. We're just standing there, staring at it, waiting to rationalize what we're seeing. But it just keeps moving toward us. And as it gets closer, we can see that it has a face, 6 legs, and what looks like the body of a huge dog. Without saying a single word to each other, we turn around and start sprinting back to the car. We get in. Both of us are yelling, "What the F? What the F?" We put the car into reverse and basically go 30 miles per hour backwards down this road. Nowadays, if I bring it up to him, he doesn't really say much. He just says, "Yeah, that was weird. Well, whatever. I don't go out there anymore." I've gone back to around that area with different people, and every single person says that they feel nervous or uneasy the second that they step onto that trail. Something is very off about that place. I live in Wisconsin, and this is something terrifying that happened way back when I was 17. And it wasn't just me that it happened to. It was my cousin Ben who was there as well. He was 16, and his friend Josh, who was also the same age. They lived way out in the middle of nowhere, but I ended up going there for the summer, family and all that. And as you can guess, by being out in the middle of nowhere, the house is surrounded by woods. The shed is a 30-minute walk from the house. Usually, we would go there to smoke and shoot our BB guns at cans and just generally be loud idiots. At this time, it was 3 in the afternoon. Around that time, Josh came up to me and said, "Ben and I want to go to the shed, and we're pretty bored. Do you have any weed?" For some reason, they weren't allowed to go by themselves, but if I was, even though I was just a year older, if I was to go with them, they were fine. Now, I also brought a lot of weed with me, so I thought, let's go. There's not much else going on today. So we start walking down the trail to the shed. The trees aren't super dense here, but they are dense enough that if you go off the trail even just a couple 100 feet, you can really get disoriented and get lost very quickly. And when we get to the shed, we notice something interesting about it already. The door is normally chained and padlocked, but the door is cracked open and the chain and lock are on the ground. I scold Ben, saying, "What the hell, man? I told you to lock this up before we left. If your pa saw it, he'd be pissed." And then, right as I finished that sentence, we hear a large cracking sound, like a tree falling over in the distance. We all just look, but nothing follows it, so I look back and resume my bitching. And then Ben says, "But I did. The chain is broken. Look at it." And then we start to think, who the hell would be out here breaking into a shed that has nothing in it? We decide that if it's a person, it's going to be 3v1, so we can check it out up close. This thick chain looks like it was gnawed through. I thought maybe it was some new robber who was high or didn't know what they were doing, didn't have a chain cutter and tried to use a saw or something. And as we're doing our little investigation, the cracking sound happens again, but a bit closer this time. And I think, alright, I have to get my rifle. We quickly leave the area and go back to the house, get our rifles, and head back as fast as we can. But now, the shed door is fully open. There's a weird smell in the air. The smell reminds me of dead animals on a hot day. I can still remember it, all so distinctly, that I can almost smell it again as I type this out. But it also smelled like wet grass and something else. It was so fast that I hardly saw it, but for just a second, I could swear I saw a person crawling on his hands and knees at some inhuman pace. After seeing this, I basically shit a brick. It stopped about 40 feet away. I could barely see it. And then it did something weird. It looked like someone trying to puke. The horrible smell intensifies from here. We all raise our rifles. I say, "What are you doing on private property? Are you injured? Any sudden movements, and we will shoot you." It very slowly turned toward us, and just the way it did sent shivers down our spine. It looked like a person in dirty clothes. We honestly may have thought it was just a homeless person if it wasn't able to cross 40 feet in under 10 seconds on its hands and knees. And it's making this weird gagging noise, like I said before. I start pushing Ben and Josh back while watching it try to heave. As they keep backing up, I raise my rifle, and it makes the most disgusting gag noise that I have ever heard. And then it pukes up this red, pink, and black stuff, and looks up at us. I can't forget its face. I still have nightmares about it. It's like if somebody had beat its face in with a hammer. It was all broken, dirty, and bloody. Its teeth were yellow and kind of rotted, but there was still puke coming out of its mouth and nose. I couldn't see its eyes really, because it had shaggy, dirty brown hair. I can't move. I'm too afraid. I hear Ben or Josh say, "Let's go, come on," and then, "Man, effing move." But I can't. Me and it are staring, and I begin to notice that its fingers are all twisted and broken looking. It has abscesses on its arms that are oozing blood and pus. It looks like a semi ran over it, and then something else weird happened. It seems that the longer we stared at each other, I started to feel sick, sicker than I've ever been. My knees began to get weak, and it felt like that I was just frozen. The longer I stared at it, the more my body wouldn't listen to me. And then my cousin screams out, "Holy shit, it's moving. We have to go. Come on, man, let's go." This snaps me out of it. I pull my gun up and I shoot a warning shot toward it. It crawls off so fast that if I had blinked, I could have missed it. We haul ass back home until my uncle shows up. I tell him. He said that he's seen it. He tells me to forget about it and gives me a beer to, quote, help with that. But I can't forget. I can't unsee. I cried all night that I was so afraid. There was a lot of other stuff to happen at that house and property as well. but nothing that scared me that bad as the weird human monster thing. But this is something that happened before. I was 13. Ben was 12. Ben used to have an outdoor cat named Socks. Socks didn't show up to eat, and it was a fat cat. That thing was always early when it was feeding time. It's about 4:30 when we actually get concerned. I ask my aunt and uncle if we should look for him. They give us walkie-talkies and keep one for themselves so they can call us back in. I grab flashlights in case it got dark. I was always kind of trying to be prepared on that property. At the time, we only had BB guns. We also had a cat food bag to try and lure him out of wherever the hell he was hiding. We walked all the way to the shed and we started looking, but we couldn't find anything. We keep walking around these little footpaths and we keep letting our aunt and uncle know where we are, where we're going, and all that. Eventually, it begins to get dark. We decide to head back home, unsuccessful. But close to the house, there's a rustling and a whisper from the tree line. I say out loud, "Ben, don't you dare scare me. Stop messing around before Auntie gets mad and whoops your butt again." But then, way up ahead of me, nowhere near the tree line, I hear Ben. "Hurry up, I'm tired." I tell him that I think I heard the cat, that Socks might be hurt. We should go see. We walk toward the rustling. It was about 6:30 and the sun was almost down. We turn a flashlight on and I shoot at the trees. The sound of whatever I pissed off that night was like a dog bark and a raven cawing. I can't even mimic the sound. I shine the light around and I catch a set of eyes. Suddenly, the walkie-talkies start going staticky and screwing up. All we hear is loud white noise from them. The sound was anything but natural. Both of us were scared as hell. We turn and run home, lock the doors. I tell my aunt and uncle what the hell happened out there. They say that it's probably a dog or a sleeping bird, but they don't believe us about the walkie-talkies. They think that we're making things up. And I hate to say it, but we did find Socks 2 days later, but he wasn't in one piece. I make myself believe that it was a coyote or a wolf or a fox or something, but I can't help but feel like these two experiences are somehow connected. Before I start off, I'll just say that even after all this happened, a little under 10 years ago, I still planned on going to school to be a park ranger, just not in Wisconsin. So, back in 2015, I was living in pretty much the actual middle of Wisconsin. The whole state is basically one big forest. I prefer being alone or maybe with one or two other friends. The forests are perfect for getting away from everything. I never had any bad experiences. I love the outdoors. My dad buys a place in the far north in a very small town. It's Phillips, Wisconsin, if anyone's ever been there. We use it as a vacation home. It was a pretty run-down place, but we decided that we could fix it up. During the time of this, it was mid-June. I was just out of sophomore year of high school. My older brother and I decided to take a trip up to the place up north. This place is at least a 4-hour drive from where I live, and when I said it was in Phillips, I meant that's the closest town. Eventually, we do get there. The driveway is about a half-mile long dirt trail through the forest. At this point, it was only my second time ever going there. The first time, I stayed for a whole half a day and then left, so I'm pretty clueless about it. My dad seems to give zero shit that we go alone. We get there, and it's still the same building. The garage is still kind of collapsing in on itself, so we park outside. It's a pretty large open area with forests on all sides of us. Dad has a boat up there. a small river that runs through the land, so me and my brother can go fishing and stuff. We generally have a good time for the day. When it starts to get dark, we light a fire and drink, typical teenage stuff. By midnight, we're too drunk to notice anything unusual. Eventually, we both pass out inside. The next morning I wake up and find that my brother isn't in the cabin. He's outside, and I go over to see what he's muttering to himself about. I feel like absolute trash from the night before. He's looking at something. A deer carcass is torn apart, and the head is on the dirt driveway. It's actually a lot more common in Wisconsin than you might think. I write it off as maybe a bear. This was my first thought, considering that my dad had many pictures of bears walking around near the house. We spend maybe 5 minutes moving the deer off the driveway. It's probably the worst thing that I've ever had to smell. After that, me and my brother ate some breakfast and headed into town. It was maybe a 10-minute drive or so from this cottage. He got us some more booze with his fake ID, and then we headed to the general store. Phillips has about 1,500 residents at the time, so everyone knows everything that happens. That's mainly why it didn't surprise me that the store owner knew that we were not from there, and that we were likely the people who bought the piece of shit cottage. The whole exchange between that shop owner and us seemed off to me. It was just one of those gut feelings. He told us about our neighbor, an older Native American man who rarely, if ever, left his cabin, maybe a mile from our place. So we bought our stuff and hightailed it back to the cottage. It was around noon at this point. I sat around the cottage. It was a Saturday, a lazy day. I have really bad hearing, but luckily, my brother heard a truck pulling up outside. We both go out, wondering who the hell it could be. The truck's engine stops. The thing is covered in rust. The door opens, and the first thing I see is a big pair of cowboy boots hit the ground. It's an old Native American man. I think he must be the neighbor. I was kind of hoping he wasn't, because he might see the alcohol that we have and he might be able to tell that we're underage. But he introduces himself as the neighbor. The way he talked and his mannerisms, he seemed kind of ominous. He says that he decided to stop by, that he heard quite a bit of noise coming from here last night. Me and my brother were pretty quiet from what I could remember, so I had no clue what he heard. I thought it could have been the bear, so I mentioned the deer we found. This was apparently a very bad idea. He walked over to the side of the driveway where we threw all the bits of deer. The guy turned around and told us that the deer wasn't missing much, it was just in pieces. He said that bears usually don't kill things like that. I start to get a bad feeling about this whole area. That's probably when me and my brother should have bailed. But the old guy told us that he would stop by later on with a gift. I didn't care too much. I mean, he seemed alright, other than just being really ominous. But on the other side of things, I love to hear their stories. So I've always wanted to kind of sit down and have a drink with one, see what kind of stories they could tell me. The guy leaves. His truck is overly loud. The rest of the day goes on quite normally. We went fishing on the river again, and we started up the fire when it got dark. So we're sitting around the fire. It was maybe 10 o'clock at night by this point. Me and my brother are drinking up a storm again. We're buzzed, but not too drunk. We're waiting for that native guy to show up. And then we see headlights coming up the driveway. It's the same loud truck as before, the same cowboy boots as before, and the same guy. But this time he's holding something. It looked like a small bundle of something. He walked over toward me and my brother, and I can see what he's holding clearly with the firelight. It's bones. Human bones, actually. He sits down next to me, smiling. I was buzzing, so I wasn't super fazed by this. I asked him outright about the bones, and it's weird. He told me all about them, but I can't seem to remember anything. I just attribute this to that I was a little more buzzed than I thought I was. But the key word that I got from him was Wendigo. My B-movie senses tingled. I almost feel like I'm kicked back into sobriety. He tells us to take the bones and bury them in our yard before midnight, but he didn't specify why. Me and my brother both know some stuff about the Wendigo, thanks to movies and stories that we've read. He tells us not to leave tonight either. We didn't question it at this point. He gets up, nods to both of us, and leaves. So we took the bundle that he left, and we did exactly what he said. We buried them right then and there in front of the house, went straight inside, and locked all the doors. It was a sleepless night. Me and my brother just stayed up talking about what could happen, horrible ways that we were probably going to die, etc. I left my brother alone for a moment to go to the bathroom. I came back, and he was passed out. I didn't bother waking him up, but I sure as hell wasn't going to bed now. I played solitaire for what felt like forever, and then around 2 a.m, I hear something outside. It sounded like a horse galloping, but slower in pace. I didn't want to look outside, but I did anyways. I see a deer running across the tree line about 10 yards away. I watched it run. It looked like it tripped or something pulled it down. There was nothing else near it though, from what I could see. The deer just sat there. It looked like it was in excruciating pain, but it wasn't making a sound. And then I hear some sort of screeching. I've gone hunting before. I've heard deer yelp before. This was definitely not that. I saw something crawl up on top of the deer. It was smaller than me though. I couldn't get that much of a good look at it yet, but I could tell it was small, maybe 4.5 feet tall. I saw it doing something to the deer. I couldn't make out exactly what. I remembered that there's binoculars here. I'm not sure if I really wanted to use them, but going against myself like I always do, I went ahead and I got them. I looked through. The thing was still on the deer, but the deer was long dead. Its back was clawed up and the head was basically torn clean off. And then I got kind of a good look at the thing. It had no hair of any kind, just this pink, fleshy skin. It was just smearing the deer's flesh against its face. I could actually make out some eyes now. It took a bit to get adjusted to the darkness, but no mouth. It might sound stupid, but I almost felt bad for it. Though, if this was a Wendigo, it makes sense that it can't eat. I might sound mellow retelling this story, but at the time, it was absolutely terrifying, and I was basically shitting myself while seeing this. I decided to wake up my brother and tell him what's going on. We watched it try to eat for hours, and then the sun started to come up. I guess it doesn't enjoy sunlight too much because it ran off. Me and my brother bolted out to our car and got the hell out of there. The whole 4-hour drive back, we didn't say one word to each other. My dad thought that we were idiots after we told him. It's been 2 years and he's gone up a lot more than I have, but as of 2017, he put it up for sale. The other weird thing that happened was when my dad went up there to investigate the weekend after. He said that the spot that we had buried something was dug up, but there was nothing in the hole. Plus, all the deer carcasses were gone, but I'm thinking that maybe the native guy came and cleaned them up. I know it's been so long now, but I wonder if it would be nice to go up there again, see if I can find the old cabin, see what happens. So those were definitely some insane encounters from Wisconsin. If any one of them stuck out to you the most, let me know which one it was. If you have your own encounter, I'd love to hear it. I have an email in the description below that you can send them to if you'd like to, and I'm still working on a social media presence and stuff like that. It's coming. I'm just slow at it. And also down in the description is a PayPal and a Patreon if you would like to support the channel that way. And super thanks here on YouTube. And with that, I think I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump with me, and thank you for watching. If you liked the video, then feel free to like and subscribe, and maybe check out another video. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.